정복해지는 옴남 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 공양시방조사 영양청정미묘법 삼승사과 탈승 원수 애납수
Welcome everybody today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know sometimes it's not easy to do this, and some people came from long distances, others came from short distances, but we all put in the same effort. So before I begin and bore the crap out of you, don't want to waste too much of your time. Does anybody have a question they'd like to begin with? Okay. So a long, long time ago, stories usually start that way, don't they? I think the reason they start with a long, long time ago is because, it's hard to verify it. So you could say you can make up anything. A long time ago in one of the Chinese provinces, let's say it's in the Tang Dynasty, there was a lot of unrest, constant warring factions, similar to Afghanistan today. You have these tribes, basically. We have states. We call them states. So we graduated from tribe to a thing we call state. But these tribes all wanted power. So they would try to seize it from one another. It's kind of like the story of America. It's like, why is football the national sport? Anybody know? Well, football, it's not, in England they call soccer football. We call it soccer. Football is macho here. Football basically is our national sport because it represents who and what we are. And football is about kicking the shit out of the other guy and taking his land. It's a land acquisition game. And if you take enough land, i.e., get into his end zone enough times, more times than he does, you win. Sound familiar? So there's some weird primal instinct there for us to go take other people's stuff. So this is what began to happen in this province in southern China. Some local warring factions decided they wanted this province's land. And so at that time, they had small standing armies, obviously, but nothing to the extent of the military industrial complex we know today. So what they would do is they would go out and draft people. Now this wasn't a voluntary thing. They would go from town to town drafting people, okay? So I'm just setting this story up. So anyway, before this occurred, there was this old poor farmer who lived within this particular province. And he had the most beautiful white stallion in the entire kingdom. It was the perfect representation of a white horse. And so that represents something to us, because man and horse become one and makes the man more powerful. And then to have the white horse, that's, it's like wearing this stuff, right? You come in on the white horse, it's like, ooh, that guy must be important. So the prince wanted this horse. And he used to occasionally come down and look at it. And this farmer had nothing really, he barely lived off the subsistence farming that he had. And the prince would always come and say, I'll give you riches beyond your belief. Just sell me this horse. And the old man would say, this horse is not mine to sell. And the prince always went away disappointed. As time went on, one night the horse escaped from its corral. And when the old man came out in the morning, he found the beautiful white stallion missing. When the local villagers heard this, they came down and they said, you could have had riches beyond your belief. All you had to do is sell that white horse to the prince. And you were a fool. Now, I'm sure you regret not selling your horse. The old man said, all I know is that the white horse is no longer in its corral. And the villagers went away laughing. About 2 weeks had passed, and one morning the old man came out. And the white horse had returned. Except when it returned, it brought back 15 wild stallions with it. And they were all in his corral. And when the villagers heard this, they all came running down to the old man's little farm place there, and they said, old man, we were wrong, and you were right. Your horse has returned, and now you can surely sell all of these white horses, and you'll never have to worry again in your life. And the old man looked at the villagers and shook his head, and he said, all I know is that my white horse has returned and brought these other wild horses with it. In the coming weeks, the old man's son decided that, to be able to marketably offer these horses for sale, they needed to be broken in. Allow a rider to sit on their backs. And so in the process of trying to do this, one of these wild horses threw the son to the ground and stumbled all over his legs and broke both his legs. And the villagers heard this, and they all came down. And they said, oh, such a tragedy. We thought this was good fortune, but we see now it's your ultimate misfortune, because now it's sowing time. And you won't be able to have the help you need in your small, farm to be able to plant what you need. You'll surely starve this winter. The old man shook his head, and he said, all I know is that my son has 2 broken legs. A little bit after this, the province was invaded, and the prince came through all of the villages, recruiting all of the healthy young men and taking them with him to take off to battle. And obviously when he got to the old man's place, the son was useless to him because he was crippled, he had 2 broken legs. When this occurred, the villagers came running down to the old man's place and they said, old man, we were wrong. All of our sons have been taken off to battle. They'll surely all die. But your son is at least here with you now because of his broken legs. And again, the old man shook his head. All I know is that the prince has come and taken your sons off to battle, and my son was left behind. So, what does this story tell us? It tells us one thing, that we have the villagers represent one side of our mind. The old man represents the other side. Yeah. The villager side of our minds are basically the dominant one for most of us. That's the one that's always talking about benefit and loss, about tragedy and horrible, horrible, horrible things. Our enlightened self, if we can call it that, our true nature, our original nature, is the old man. Many of you came and did koan practice this morning. All these koans that we do are meant to help us rediscover our old man side. Okay. It doesn't judge. It doesn't cling. It doesn't create. In the words of Zen Master Sung Song, it doesn't make anything. Yet we all have these dialogues going on in our heads, right? I'm sure, one of the most popular people who recently passed away was a guy by the name of Steve Jobs. And at the time that he got fired from his, he was a founder of Apple. When he got fired from Apple, he thought that was the worst thing that had ever happened to him. And he went off and did some other things. He didn't give up. He didn't surrender. he started Next Computer, which was a big flop, by the way. But he kept putting in the effort. Eventually, they asked him to come back. And, the rest is history, right? We go through tragedy in our lives. We stumble. But when we do that, a lot of times, we put so much baggage on it that we make it worse than it really is. Because we don't know if it's a good thing or if it's a negative thing. We don't know yet. So we live in such a short-term view of our lives that we miss the overall grand scope of what life is. Again, going back, Zen Master Sun San used to say, a good situation is a bad situation. A bad situation is a good situation. Anybody want to guess why he would say that? In Buddhism, we have these 7 levels of hell, and we also have 7 levels of heaven. And a lot of times people live in what's called the Asura realm. That's the highest realm. People like Brad Pitt live in the Asura realm. He's an exception, by the way. He and Jennifer Lopez. The other ones that live in the Asura realm are like Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, right? So a good situation sometimes is a bad situation. Why? We don't question anything. We just keep spending, having a good time. Life's great. I don't have to worry about a thing. Till, you spend all your money like MC Hammer. You had to have that helicopter, Had to have a helicopter. Had to have all the toys. And then he ended up with nothing. We can look at it, Mike Tyson was another one. These people, thought that they were always going to live in the Asura realm, so they didn't bother about anything. But when we're in a bad situation, we start questioning everything. Somebody close to us dies, some kind of life-changing event occurs, and then all of a sudden, all of the stuff, all of the bullshit you've been telling yourself stops immediately. Because you always thought there was time in the future to get it done. And that's why it feels uncomfortable. And then we think, I don't like feeling this way. I don't like being anxious like this. Because why? Because all of that projection out into the future gets wiped clean in a single instant. And then, what do? We start making up a new story. And we start filling in all those blanks. And then we stuff it with other stuff. That's what he meant by a good situation is a bad situation, and a bad situation is a good situation. Because actually, if we take that bad situation and we look at it, we can assess what really is important to us. What does it really mean to be alive? Who am I? What am I really doing in this this world. And what was all that nonsense I made up about the future that was just a fantasy anyway? We only live in this present moment. That's all we can change. That's all we can address. That's all there is. That's it. There's nothing else. And even when I said that, now it's gone. That never comes back. So don't waste your time being the villager side of your essence. Cultivate the old man. Just see what's there. Accept the gifts as they come. Accept the misfortunes as they come. And see what happens. Because guess what? Things always change. If we try to force them, then we usually end up screwing things up. If we get anxious over it, we get in a hurry. We want to get back to that same old feeling we had. When maybe living in the questions is good enough. So, anybody, comments, questions? Everybody attained their old man?
It's a hard line to follow.
What's that?
When the pressure is, you got a big head, you got to plan for your future, and I mean, I see the point of that, but there's a lot of segments of society that frown on when you just live in the moment, which, you know, learn to be okay with, but.
Yeah, this doesn't necessarily mean don't do everything that you just said. The important thing to remember is don't make where you're going more important than where you are. Where we are is the most important thing. Yeah, we can plan. I mean, we can do that stuff. But don't let it take center stage in your life where it dominates everything and you lose this moment. Because you're living your life for that moment. Is that kind of... But you're right, yeah. I mean, we're all brought up with that, you know. I can't tell you how many of my students that tell me, their parents are highly disappointed with the path they've taken. You're not a success. Can't you be like your brother? He's a success. Look at it. He's got 3 BMWs, and he's got the big house, and he's got the mortgage, and he's just like I am, But you're not. You're weird.
But happy.
Yeah. Do you know why people do that, by the way? Because if you live outside of the norm, your very existence makes them uncomfortable. Like, how can you do that and actually be happy? I can't do that, but they can. And you're right. Somebody's looking, but I think he saw it.
There's Mikey.
So anyway, I hope that kind of helps. But yeah, commercials, everything is set, so that we consume and live for the future, and it's all about fear. In fact, it's all about fear and sex. Well, it is. That's all they sell. And that's okay, you know. I mean, it's okay to, you know, move forward. It's okay to, you know, have a retirement account. It's okay, you know, to plan. Everything's okay. Just don't let it dominate your life. Allow the old man to dominate your life. I'm just using that as a metaphor. So that's my metaphor for today anyway. At least this moment, it'll change. So, any other questions? Complaints? Comments? Addendums? Anybody know what time it is?
10:33.
What time am I supposed to end? Do I have to tell another story?
We can twist your teaching stick.
I mean, I will. I'd rather address, you know, what you guys came here for, but, you know, I'll tell you another story.
Hold on a second.
So our battery died, and we had to go back and set things up again, and, yeah, it's all good. So we now have a question. So go ahead.
Well, since no one else has any other questions and we have extra time, you mind telling us some anecdotes about some song or the haunting?
Sure. So the question is, you know, some anecdotes about the Sum Song. My first Zen teacher. Okay, I'm gonna save the obvious story, because somebody else might have to come up with it later. But I'll tell you one that's not that well known. And actually, this was told to me by Musang Sanin, who's a senior monk in Guangdong. Years ago, Zen Master Sung Sung lived at, he basically had two places where he lived, and one of them was at Dharma Zen Center, which is in LA, it's in Koreatown, and then the other one was at Providence Zen Center, which is in Cumberland, Rhode Island. He was scheduled to give a Dharma talk at Choge International Zen Center, which is in New York. And so somebody, he had a car at that time. He didn't have a license, but you know, they had given him a car, and the Zen students would drive it for him, you know, drive him around. So somebody had volunteered to drive him down to New York, but they needed to stay in New York. And so after the ceremony, you know, it was late, you know, they had like a little celebration after the talk, and, you know, many, many questions and lots of socializing, so it was getting rather late, and he wanted to go back to Providence, and so he found Musang Sanin, who was a monk. He's I guess I did say that, he's a senior monk. And he said, "Oh, Musang Sanin, you must drive me back to Providence." I go, "Oh, sir, I'm very tired." And he goes, "Well, no one else can do it, so this is your job." So he said, "Yeah, okay." So this is a long, long time ago. So, you know, they start driving. It's about I think it's about a 5-hour drive from Cumberland, Rhode Island to, from New York to Cumberland. Might even be longer. So they take off late at night. And, you know, Zemester Sunsan sitting in the back seat. So they're driving. He decides that he's just gonna doze off in the back seat, so he lays down. Yeah, so Musang Sinim's driving it. He starts getting angry, like, you know, son of a bitch is sleeping. And he's making me drive. I'm tired, man. You know? So he's driving, he's thinking, man, that's not right. He should at least be awake and keep me company, you know. This is all going on in his head. So as he's driving, he thinks, I'll show that bastard. I'm gonna drive this fucking car off a cliff. So he's thinking, well, I don't know where any cliffs are. So he thinks, oh, I'll just run right into the, you know, to one of these overpasses. I'll smash this car to bits and I'll show him. So he's thinking this, you know, how he's gonna kill this Zen master, right? Because he's sleeping in the back seat. And while he's, you know, all this is going on, he's going, yeah, next overpass, I'm gonna do it. All of a sudden, Sunsan sits up, he goes, what kind of happening? And he goes, what, sir? Oh, are you okay, Musang Sinim? And he goes, yes, sir, everything's good. Oh, very good. I was getting worried. So he said, okay, I'm gonna take a nap. So then he lays back down. So, you know, for a while, you know, Musang was like, that was weird. So then, you know, it's like, I mean, he woke up, but, you know, he went right back to taking his nap, you know. He didn't care about me. Going, well, yeah, I think running right into the center of the overpass is the way to do it. He said, but, you know, I'm gonna have to get this car up as fast as it'll go, because I'm gonna show him a lesson that he'll never forget. Sunsan sits up. What kind of happening? Are you okay, Musang? Yes, sir, I'm okay. All good. I was a little concerned. He lays back down. So, you know, about 20 minutes pass, everything was fine. His thoughts keep coming back. So, you know, the whole scenario is running its course again. So Sunsan sits up, he goes, okay, Musang Sinim, next exit, we go get coffee, maybe get some pie. Go, oh, yes, sir. So that's a story about Sunsan. I have no idea. Okay? I'm sure somebody else will tell you one that's more bizarre. Any questions about that?
Do you think Sun was aware that what he was planning?
That'd be speculation, wouldn't it? That's what I already told you, I don't know what that means.
Maybe he wasn't aware that he was actually verbalizing that, not just thinking it.
You know, and that might be true when the cow jumps over the moon. You know, and then we say, you know, turtle's hair and rabbit's horn. You know, all of this is just made up. You know, and so again, you know, this goes back to the last story. We have a tendency to try to fill in the blanks. You know, personal story, you know, we were driving Thursday, Friday, you know, 26, 27 hours. Got up at 6, really hit the freeway at about 8. And the sun goes, starts going down, right? And it gets darker and darker. But you still make out things out there, right? Before it's just black and all you see are like traffic lights and other cars, headlights and taillights. And we pass this, one of those electronic road signs, and it says, visibility may be 0 due to wildfires. We're driving, Sunyananda's driving, sitting in the front seat with him, and all of a sudden he goes, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, son of a bitch." And so we saw this huge bank of dense clouds, and we go, "Oh shit, we're heading right for it, yeah, we're gonna run right into it." And then at the exact same instance, we got close enough to this, cloud formation and realized it was the side of a cliff. And it was just barely the last, light that was left in the day. And you could just make out some highlights and the dark parts, but seriously, it looked like, it looked like that.
That's what Thelma Louise it.
But see, this is, in psychology, it's not Gestalt therapy. Gestalt psychology deals with, human perception. And that's exactly what we do. When there's something missing, we will automatically fill it in. A lot of times when there's misspelled words, I'm sure you've seen enough of that crap on Facebook, you'll read right over it and you auto-correct it in your head. You don't do it. There's a function of the mind that just automatically wants to do that. Later, much later, or earlier, Jung Min was driving, and it was really, really dark, and we're behind some kind of vehicle, and it's like, what the hell is that? It looked like this immense,
I forgot about that.
huge, like blimp in front of us. It was taking up both lanes, and it was like, oh my God, what is that? And so we're getting closer. It's getting bigger. Because it was kind of at an angle, and we kind of didn't know that it was turning, and so when we got behind, it was just one of those, aluminum tanker trucks. But from our perspective, it looked like some huge Goodyear blimp that was sitting in the middle of the freeway. So again, that was just my recent experience. Part of it's sleep deprivation, part of it is the darkness. But, it's interesting that, in both cases, we both saw it very clearly. And almost simultaneously, when we got close enough and made out the details, then that kind of weird perception fell away, and the correct one was automatically reinserted. So again, we have to be cognizant that that's what we want to do. We want things to make sense in a world that's just ultimately chaos. We create society. Why? Because we're trying to make sense out of chaos. So we try to tame the chaos. That's why we're sitting inside these 4 walls right now. Because we feel safe from the bears that roam around. When we're sitting in here, we feel safe from the scorpions. Although when I was living in Vegas, these son of the bitches crawled into my bed twice and started scaring the crap out of me. I don't know why I have bad luck with scorpions. Or the snakes, right?
Or the bugs.
Especially the bugs. But then we get used to our what? Our fake reality. Because we create it. But, you know, if it's not maintained, this stuff crumbles in less than 50 years. It falls apart by natural process. Just like our bodies fall apart by natural process. And now, you know, we're getting sold all kinds of stuff to make us look younger, you know. Shoot Botox in your lips, you know, so they get really big and fluffy, you know. You'll look sexy. You know. Oh, I'll put more in there. And then I'll really look sexy. I put too much. Bummer. I don't want my nose to look like Diana Ross. Oh shit, the end of it fell off. That's what we do. You know, we're not happy with what we got. We want it to be something else. Why? Because, again, it's all the same thing. We listen to others, you know. I think I said this last night. If I didn't, I was dreaming it. You know, if you seek for the approval of others, you become their prisoner. That was Lao Tzu. And that's true. But how many of us are really comfortable in our own skin? You know, if we don't have hair, we want hair. Yeah? I have lots of hair, and I'd be fine if I didn't. I wouldn't have to shave it so much. You know? So, you know, it's never ever what we really want. And somebody else will talk about that, I'm sure. So, time.
10:50.
So, questions, comments, complaints? We good? All right, so break time, huh? 10 minutes, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so 10-minute break, and then we'll meet back here and get somebody else's insight into nonsense.